NXT 2016. This is interviews, music reviews, and more. This is The Hodder Show.
What is up, everybody? We are Rolling Audio here today in episode 325 of The Hodder Show. I hope you guys are doing absolutely fantastic. Thank you so very much for tuning in and clicking that play button on today's episode of the podcast. I have an absolutely devastating episode of the podcast for you here today, as I am joined by he's been undefeated for the last 2 years, folks. The reigning and defending Chinlock Heavyweight Champion of the World, CJ Felony, is here on The Hodder Show. We talk all about the upcoming Chinlock Wrestling event comeback that is happening on June 4th, including an exclusive about that event. So stay tuned for that a little closer to the end of the podcast. We also talk in depth about his start with wrestling and kind of the early days of his wrestling career, how he got into wrestling, some wrestlers that really influenced him, as well as we start off the podcast talking a little bit about the recent information that Stone Cold Steve Austin will be appearing in some way, shape, or form at Wrestlemania against Kevin Owens. So that was fun to start off with. And we just have a lot of fun banter. Also talk a little bit about music, as that was something that really made me such a big fan of CJ Felony, his work, and it was just a great episode. We talked for like almost 2 hours, so if you're a fan of CJ Felony or a wrestling fan, you're really, really gonna love every second of this chat. I can't thank CJ enough for being such a fantastic guest and being so candid and just being a great guy, and also being a badass, because he's been undefeated for the last 2 years. I mean, come on, let's be serious. That's the main takeaway from this podcast. And by the way, we love Danny Franchise here at The Hodder Show, as well as Jan Murphy. But before we get into my episode with CJ Felony, I need to take a second to thank everybody for their support on last week's episode of the show, in which I had a conversation with Bryson Emmons from the Stone Cold Crows. It was such a fantastic chat, and I had a lot of great feedback. Huge shout outs again to Bryson for all of the support and for being such a fantastic guest, and also to Mitch from the Stone Cold Crows as well. Definitely will be seeing Bryson come on again sometime, because he has a lot more to talk about. Just like my guest here today has a lot to talk about with his career, the upcoming comeback for Chinlock Wrestling. So much ground to cover here with CJ Felony right now on The Hodder Show. Let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, we are graced with the presence of the reigning and defending Chinlock Heavyweight Champion of the World, CJ Felony, also known to some people as Justin Cusio. Justin, what's up, brother? How are you? It's good to see you.
Hey, buddy. Thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate it. An awesome introduction. I should get you in the ring and doing that.
Oh, well, I mean, listen, there's people like me who like to do these things and like that for fun to his buddies when they walk in a room. And then there's professionals like Sideshow, but that's...
I don't know, man. You might give them a run for your money.
Ooh, you hear that, Sideshow? Come on. What up, man? You know? No, huge shout out to Sideshow. I'm a big fan. But, man, it's good to see you. It's good to see... the biggest thing, obviously, we're going to talk about today, Chinlock Wrestling getting ready to make a comeback. Things are starting to kind of get back normal in the world. It's just, it's a good time, and it's good to finally link up with you, man. I wanted to do this for a while.
Yeah, man, I'm really excited to talk to you. And like you said, Chinlock coming back. Things are finally starting to get back to normal, and it feels really good. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure, man. And it's funny, guys. For those of you who don't know, on top of the fact that Justin is a phenomenal wrestler, who obviously we're going to get into all your career and everything, there's a lot of ground I want to cover with you, but also you're a big music fan. And there's been times I've messaged you about stuff and I'm just like, oh my God, like, I can't believe you even know that song or whatever. So like, it's so fun to to have all this ground that we want to cover. But one thing I wanted to immediately get your take on, because I just saw this as we are recording this Tuesday night. I just saw this video before we started.
All right.
And I wanted to get your immediate take on it, assuming you've heard about this. Have you heard about what's happening with Kevin Owens at WrestleMania?
I have. I saw the video this morning.
Okay. Of the Stone Cold. Okay.
I did.
So for those of you who don't know Stone Cold Steve Austin, not Stone Cold Danny Franchise, but Stone Cold Steve Austin, the real one. Shout out to Danny Franchise. He has announced basically that he's going to be at WrestleMania in some way, shape, or form to either brawl or fight or have a match or open a can of whoop ass on Kevin Owens. What are your immediate thoughts on that? It's been 19 years since we've seen Stone Cold Steve Austin wrestle in a ring, and he talked about his last match. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
So I'm good right up until you said have a match. I don't care if he comes out and opens a can of whoop ass. I don't care if he has a little brawl. I don't care if he gets physically involved, but I do not want Stone Cold Steve Austin to have another match. And that's coming from probably the biggest Stone Cold Steve Austin fan of all time. And I'll tell you why. Can you paint a better retirement match and moment than WrestleMania 19 versus The Rock? I don't think you can. Like, I mean, and this is not a knock on Kevin Owens, because I think Kevin Owens is great, but he's not The Rock. And it's not WrestleMania 19. I mean, it was just, even though we didn't know at the time that was going to be his last match, it is the perfect final match of a wrestling career. And I always have a hard time with wrestling retirements, because I think retire is a funny word. When a carpenter retires, that doesn't mean that they never pick up a hammer again. You know, when a school bus driver retires, that doesn't mean that he never gets behind the wheel of a car or a bus or anything else ever again. And when a wrestler retires, we have this this preconceived notion that means that they'll never wrestle again, right? So we kind of poke fun at the Mick Foleys and the Ric Flairs and the Terry Funks who have retired and come back 1,000 times. I don't really see fault in that. But, 19 years later, after that picture perfect retirement moment, I just don't know that I really want to see Stone Cold Steve Austin in a wrestling match, because you look at a guy like Bill Goldberg who came back and he sent a couple of real stinkers. And I just don't really want that to tarnish the legacy of arguably the greatest wrestler of all time.
Sure. Yeah, no, I totally know what you're saying. And I agree. Like, as someone who, I just missed his biggest era, but obviously remember Stone Cold Steve Austin being a kid, and I would say arguably top wrestler ever. Like, obviously there's a lot of other people we could throw in there, but as far as being a draw and all that fancy stuff, like, it's got to be Stone Cold. And I mean, I think if he comes in and, throws a few punches, hits a stunner, drinks a few Broken Skull IPAs in the ring, does a little swimming, gets out, everyone's happy.
I'm all in on that. Yeah. Like, absolutely. And he's done that before, right? He's come back. He's hit people with stunners. He's, had the beer bath, the whole 9 yards. I'm all for that. And in Texas, in front of, what could be 80,000 people, that's going to be a huge moment and a really feel-good moment for, it's been tough with live wrestling. It's been taken away from us for so long. So these big feel-good moments are great. I just don't want them in a match.
Yeah, I think it's something to be said with, he's spoken so many times before about how, as much as, yes, his final match wasn't really his choice, like, he was still happy enough with it. He wasn't in a great place mentally at the time, and he'll tell you that now, obviously, looking back. But, like, is it worth it 19 years later? You look at some guys, like, you talk to Mick Foley, and you hear him talk about his, how he had that great swan song with Edge. And he was like, he said before, if I could go back, that match would be, if not his last match, one of his last big match. And then, he had his stint in TNA, which he's pretty much said like that was all, he hates that's part of his legacy. Which is like, that sucks to hear. And it's like, hey, 10 years from now, if Stone Cold actually gets in the ring and has a match, regardless of how he does, like, he can't take a bump. So it's going to be 3 minutes of him beating up Kevin Owens, which, hey, that's cool, but did we have to call it a match? Do we have to make it an official thing? Like,
you know what?
I don't know.
Maybe he can take a bump. Like, it's been 19 years, right?
Sure,
and when he retired, he was really beat up and banged up, and we didn't think guys like, Edge or any of the Danny Bryan is another, great example of that, where we just didn't think these guys were ever going to be able to come back. He might be able to come in and take bumps. And, let's say that he has an actual match with Kevin Owens. How do you complete the career of Stone Cold Steve Austin at the same level as the match with The Rock at WrestleMania 19? Like, is it Roman Reigns? Maybe. Is it Brock Lesnar? Maybe. To me, that match with The Rock was just both guys were in top form. It was an amazing crowd. And he was at the top of his game when he left. Like, not many guys get to do that. And have the legacy that he has. I just really, I hope that discretion is the better part of valor here, and that, whatever it is, I'm sure it's going to be fun because it's Stone Cold Steve Austin, and it's, it's a beer bash and a kick ass, whatever. I just don't want a match though.
Yeah. And I mean, that promo he cut, it was a recorded video promo, whatever, but like he's Stone Cold Steve Austin. Like, he's never going to not be Stone Cold Steve Austin. You saw that in that video. And I mean, I'm excited to see what he does. I'm kind of skeptical. I know that our dear friend Sam Hudson kind of said the same thing, where he was like, like our wrestling group chat, he was like, I don't know, like, big shout out to Sam. But yeah, it's interesting. And I know I've heard you mention before you're a Stone Cold fan, so I wanted to get your take on it. But it'll be interesting. To see what happens at WrestleMania.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Like, I'm happy that Stone Cold's going to be there, and it is what it is. And if it is a match, then I guess it is. But like, I'm just happy that Stone Cold is back and involved, and it's going to be fun.
Mm-hmm. And looks great too. I mean, he was never not in shape. Like, he's always looked great.
Yeah, I think he might even look better now than he did then.
Yeah, you look at some guys, like, that's been happening a lot lately. There's some of these guys from that era that just, like, aside from The Rock, of course, because he,
I've seen Ric Flair. I saw a picture of Ric Flair, and he's got giant fucking guns on.
Yeah. What's he trying to pull? Like,
dying in a hospital bed 2 years ago, and now he looks better than ever. Like,
what the hell? Yeah. You want to think I got one more run in me? Like, get out of here. Like, I wouldn't be shocked. I would not. It wouldn't even surprise me if something pops up, Ric Flair and AEW, like, retirement match or something. It wouldn't even shock me.
Yeah, and like, I could use Ric Flair as the example, right? Like, Ric Flair had the absolute most perfect retirement match of all time ever, can't be touched, and then he went to TNA.
Yeah. And again,
he had fun. He did fun stuff. He did fun stuff with Sting. He did fun stuff with Hogan. He did fun stuff with Mick Foley, but it wasn't fucking Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm sorry, I love you. Come on.
That not a dry eye in the house immediately hugs him afterwards. Like, come on. That's what, wrestling should be. It's a story. It's emotion. That's why we as wrestling fans love wrestling. It's things like that. It's a feeling, and to not have that, I don't know. I do definitely agree. And you look at what some of those guys have went on to do after their retirement matches. I mean, you look at retirement matches, like, at the same time, not everyone wants to go out like Kurt Angle. So I don't know. I get that if he's really like, I want that last one, I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to say, but I hope, and I agree with you that discretion is kind of the better part of valor on that one.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, speaking of Stone Cold and things of that nature, I want to get your take on that. But going back, you mentioned obviously being a big Stone Cold Steve Austin fan. So let's go back. Where did it all start for you with wrestling? When was the first time you really experienced wrestling?
So wrestling was something that my dad and I bonded over when I was young, wrestling and baseball. My dad was a a classic rock loving guy that I didn't connect with until later on in life. So wrestling and baseball were where we connected. And I can remember watching WrestleMania 3. And he's said, even before that, when I was 2 and 3 years old, we were sitting down watching wrestling together. And
Nice.
It was just something that I always it was something that I never really thought I would ever do. You always have that dream when you're a kid, like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I got to step into a ring and be a wrestler? But I never really thought I was going to pursue it. It wasn't until I was in my teenage years where I was like, I think I might actually want to try this. Like, I might want to give it a go. But that's where it all started. Just me and my dad sitting in the basement, smoky basement, watching wrestling.
Nice. That's fantastic. It's funny. I have a somewhat similar story with, me and my old man not really having a lot in common, and then me getting into wrestling. So it's funny to hear that. So in that time frame, who were some of your favorites that you were watching at that time?
So, I was a big Hulkamaniac, big, still am. Like, I still love Hulk Hogan to this day, despite, all the things that have come up and some of the, the really terrible elements of Hulk Hogan. I can still look back at his career and appreciate it. I was a big Ultimate Warrior guy, loved Jake the Snake Roberts, loved Rick Rude, all the classics. When I got a little bit older, I really began to appreciate Mr. Perfect, those guys. Those were my guys.
Sure. So it's almost like, and I think a lot of wrestling fans are this way, when you're younger and you don't really understand what's going on, you're more drawn to the entertainment side of it with people like a Jake the Snake, who, he was a fantastic technician, but like, is he a Mr. Perfect? I don't think so. He'd tell you that too, I'm sure, but yeah, sure. He had the character, he had the way that he would speak. I'm a big Jake Roberts fan too, and like that's more what you're drawn to when you're a kid. And then once you kind of start to understand like what's going on, like, okay, I get it, and you're drawn to, because I was the same. Like, I would see guys like, not so much in my area with Mr. Perfect, but like guys like him where it's like, wow, what he's doing is super impressive.
Yeah, for sure. Like, once I got into my early teens, the Shawn Michaels, the Mr. Perfects, the Bret the Hitman Harts, they were kind of who I was more drawn to. But when I was a kid, it was definitely like all about the big characters, all about the colors, like tassels and giant superhuman looking, characters. That's what I was into.
Definitely. You look at the Ultimate Warrior. That's a character who was just made for kids, really. Yeah. Like, Yeah. And he
can't wrestle his way out of a wet paper bag. Like, looking at it objectively now, would I pick a Mr. Perfect or a Bret the Hitman Hart over an Ultimate Warrior for sure? But
yes, but it's it was like I think I remember bringing up Mick Foley again for the third time on this podcast. But I remember he had this really nice message after Ultimate Warrior had passed away, and it was he kind of admitted how he was like, I never understood Warrior, but he's mentioning how his daughter was in the audience that last promo he did. Yep. And he was saying how I never understood Ultimate Warrior until that night. Because he was just like, oh, this isn't for me. This isn't for older wrestling fans. His promos and stuff, these are for kids. And he knows that. These rambling promos that don't really make any sense to us, but you look at the kids in the audience and they're like, oh my goodness, the Warriors and blah, 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 and the cosmic whatever.
I think the biggest knock on Ultimate Warrior is that he can't wrestle. Yeah. Right? Like, people were like, he's a shitty wrestler. I don't think Ultimate Warrior ever came out and he's like, hey guys, I'm the best wrestler in the world.
No.
Never. He knows who he is, and he knows the presentation that he was trying to put together. And we're still talking about Ultimate Warrior to this day. So that means he must have been pretty damn good at what he was doing.
Exactly. And you look at a lot of guys from that era, and I'm someone who I've always appreciated the art form and the athleticism behind professional wrestling more so than anything. Obviously, I love a good promo as much as the next guy, but I have such a profound respect for even the little things, so when I see people who are just fantastic technicians, it's like, that almost impresses me more than anything. So I kind of agree with what you're saying. It's like with someone like Warrior, it's like I'd watch him do stuff and I'm like, oh geez, that one, like that that hurt. Like, damn. Okay.
And I mean, you can never look at an Ultimate Warrior match and say, nope, that's not Ultimate Warrior. Like, he was Ultimate Warrior 150% of the time. Like, anytime you saw Ultimate Warrior, he was Ultimate Warrior.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So when you started getting a little older, like you had mentioned, early teenage years, that was kind of the, I guess, the new generation era of WWF with your Shawn Michaels and
your Razors, your 1, 2, 3 kids. Yep.
Was there a match of that era that, like, so you mentioned in that time frame, you kind of were like starting to be like, this is kind of cool. Like, wouldn't it be fun to do this? Was there any matches that stick out that was like you watched and you were like, okay, I want to do that?
I think I probably wore the tape out on WrestleMania 12, Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart Iron Man match. Like, I watched that match front to back, forward, backwards, slow-mo, fast-mo. I pick it apart, watch 10 minutes. Like, I watched that match so many friggin' times. And I just remember thinking, like, that this is just so cool that they're able to take these people on this, like, emotional journey for an hour. I'd never seen to that point an hour-long match. The only other Iron Man match I can remember seeing before that was a Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Stunning Steve Austin 30-minute Iron Man match.
Yes.
So to go for a whole hour, and I mean, I say I'm the biggest Steve Austin fan. I'm also probably the biggest Shawn Michaels fan. That goes through like the Hart Foundation era when it was DX and Hart Foundation. I was the biggest Shawn Michaels fan, and even though he was stuffing the Canadian flag up his nose, I was like, yeah, this is
you didn't care. Great. You're just like, yeah, this guy's the best.
I'm all in. Like, I just thought it was awesome.
Yeah, well, and that's what's so cool about that era. Like, you look at, like you'd mentioned, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Stunning Steve Austin. Like, that was actually when I was a little older and started going back. Like, I started really appreciating the Iron Man matches. But that Iron Man match you mentioned, like, you look at the precision at the ending of that match to the second. Yep. It's like, if you remotely understand wrestling and you view that and don't think that is just one of the most impressive things ever, I don't know what to tell you. It's amazing.
You just can't be impressed. If that isn't it, you can't be impressed.
If you're just like, it's like, come on, man. That's poetry.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So as time went on in that era, like as we started moving towards, like the D-Generation X's and kind of that early Attitude Era, were you still as much of a fan, or did you kind of...
And I was more of a fan.
Okay.
And my love for wrestling grew year over year exponentially. When we got to the peak of the Attitude Era, we're talking like 98, 99, 2000, 2001, I was consuming more wrestling than any human on this earth besides Vince McMahon. Like, I was so thirsty for wrestling. I would find it anywhere. I was trading tapes, Japanese tapes, Mexican tapes. I was, every Raw, every SmackDown, every Nitro, ECW on TNN, anything I could consume. My entire life, all of my free time was consumed by wrestling. And the first wrestler that made me believe that I could do it was Mick Foley.
Nice. Because that's someone who I was about to ask you, out of all those promotions of someone who was in all of them, did you have a favorite? And it's cool to hear Mick Foley, because he was someone I think for a lot of people were like, well, if that guy can do it, I can do it.
Absolutely. And his story was kind of parallel to mine. I was starting to participate in, I mean, people call it backyard wrestling, but for us, it was like basement floor wrestling. We would drag mattresses down to the basement, and then we had characters created. It was my friend Rob Photo and I who wrestled at the student showcase, the first student showcase.
That's for Chinlock awesome.
Silver Fox.
The Silver Fox, bro.
Yeah, it was cool for me to have that match with him, because I met him when I was 12 years old, and we created the Extreme Wrestling Federation, EWF, and we probably had 30 characters created, and we would build cards, and then each of us would. Some of us, like, sometimes I would be one character, and then the next time we go through a card, he would play that character. We would feed off of each other and try to make it better and push it forward. And we did that for years. We did that until I was probably 18 or 19.
So really just obsessed.
If there's a word beyond obsessed, that's what I was.
Addicted, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, like, some people have drugs. I had wrestling.
That's fantastic, though. And looking at all of the wrestling that was in that era, we'll just call it like the Attitude Era, like that late 90s, 2000s kind of era of wrestling. Were you more of a WWF guy than a WCW guy, or you just kind of consumed everything you were saying?
I consumed everything. Like, I mean, I was a big ECW fan.
Sure.
But like, if we're talking Monday Night Wars, which side was I on? I was on WWF 100% of the way. Like, did I love the NWO? Sure. But I wasn't going to tell anybody that. Like, I was a WWF guy.
That's right. Did you have any exclusive WCW and ECW guys that you were a big fan of that influenced you at all? Or
definitely, like, I was a huge Chris Kanyon fan. Chris Kanyon fan. I loved Crowbar towards the later years of WCW. Of course, I'm a huge Scott Hall fan. So both as Razor Ramon and Scott Hall in the NWO. So those were kind of like the bigger influences. What I loved about Kanyon was his ability to create. Again, like, I'm always drawn to that super creativity. So watching him perform was just like, every single match he had was great.
Possibly one of the most, just, I wouldn't even say underrated, because people within the sport know and love him and his work so much. But I think from a fan's perspective, like, not a lot of people really appreciated what he was and how much he created, even just moves. Like, he was so just,
and how many guys he influenced too, right?
Yes.
Like, there are just so many people who say Chris Kanyon was one of my biggest influences. And watching the Dark Side of the Ring episode on Chris Kanyon, you kind of get a window into the reasons why he, wasn't reliably pushed all the time. But as a talent, man, that guy was good. He was just so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. And it was something I didn't really appreciate until I was a little older. Like, wow, like, this guy really, you hear his influence and you see it as you're watching, even like later years. Like, you still see his influence a little bit these days, even.
Yep, sure do.
Mm-hmm. So as far as ECW, like you mentioned, obviously, I'm not shocked that CJ Felony was an ECW fan and all. That doesn't surprise me. But did you have any wrestlers in particular that were kind of ECW exclusive that you were a big fan of?
Don't tell Dreamer. I was a big Tommy Dreamer fan.
I'm going to send him this clip.
Yeah, please don't. So Dreamer, for sure. Like, I mean,
yeah, come on.
Dreamer was the everyman, right? Like, he came in and it was easy to get behind him and to, like, all of his storylines were so good. The storyline with Raven was just so fucking good. Sandman was another big one for me. Like, I love the beer drinking, the cigarette smoking, the cane swinging, like, all that stuff. I really liked Taz.
Hell yeah.
Tag team wise, like, when I got introduced to ECW would have been in the kind of the mid 90s. Public Enemy I thought was great. In the later years, I really got into the Impact players. I thought Just Incredible was one of those guys that doesn't get enough credit for what he was doing too. And
agreed.
Of course, Lance Storm is amazing. So
Lance T Storm, come on, the T stands for Thunder. Let's go! Like,
let's go.
Possibly one of them, another guy who just like, I mean, come on, like, one of the best minds of professional wrestling. I think a lot of people would agree with that.
Yep, just so damn good. Like, so he's forgotten more about wrestling than we'll ever know.
Yeah, and a lot of people will. When you have guys like a Chris Jericho, or I've even heard Dean Malenko say something of that nature, where it's like, that man knows more than all of us combined, and will always know more.
Yep.
As much as he might get made fun of for, being the way he is, especially by Asian Christian, but that's a
well, it comes with the territory, I suppose.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Well, so you're addicted to wrestling. Let's say you're having these basement matches and these epic cards with your buddy. When did the transition happen where you were like, okay, let's actually start training, let's start looking into really, really doing this?
That actually didn't happen. It was a decision made for me. So what happened was, independent wrestling, I actually didn't really know that independent wrestling existed up to the point when independent wrestling started coming to the Kingston area. And there was a guy who lives in Napanee. His name is Darren Hewitt, who I'm still very close friends with to this day, who was a local promoter. We had a bar in Kingston called the Iron Horse Saloon. So they were bringing a company from London, Ontario, called, I think it was called Hardcore Wrestling Federation, something like that. So Darren was the local promoter. He was kind of the footman because London's quite a ways away from Kingston, selling tickets, putting up posters, that kind of stuff. So Darren, knowing that I was a big wrestling fan, wanted to know if I wanted to get involved, like just on the ground level. Hey, you can come in and set up the ring and, kind of see how the production gets put together. And I was like, hell yeah. What time does the ring get there? 3:00? I'll be there at noon. Like,
yeah, right. Right.
And I was like, they said the ring was going to be there at 3:00, and I was there at like 10:30, standing outside the door dancing. Like, I just couldn't friggin' wait to see how a ring got put together, or like, get to touch the ropes or whatever. I didn't really care. So once we got inside, we're dragging all the ring parts in, and I'm just like, a kid in a candy store. I can see that there's something going on where something's not right. Darren's a little bit worried about something. So eventually, like when he can finally get my attention away from the fact that I'm hauling in ring parts.
You're looking at a ring, yeah.
Time of my life. He says that the referee for the show isn't going to be able to make it, or he's going to be late. He's having car trouble. And he said, I don't know anybody else who knows anything more about wrestling than you. Do you think that you could referee? And I was like, not a chance. No, I can't do that. Like, there's just no way. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, first of all, I'm going to screw up. Like, I'm going to be too flipped out about the fact that I'm standing in a wrestling ring, that I'm going to screw it up. And I'm like, the show's going to be awful because of it. But then second to that, I was like, I don't even know what to do. And he just kept saying, like, there's nobody who knows this more than you. Like, I know you can do it. Just say yes. And I stewed on it. Felt like forever. Like the rest of the afternoon, it was probably 10 minutes where I was just like mulling this life decision over in my head. So I was like, all right, I'll do it. So I wasn't allowed in the locker room. I had no idea what matches I'd be refereeing or who the wrestlers were. I still wasn't even totally convinced that it was fake. Like,
right.
I was
about to ask you that. Okay.
Like, I was so naive to the whole, like, I knew it was fake, but
you knew there was something going on behind the curtain, so to speak, but you were like kind of like, is
back
this
there though? Like, right. I wasn't allowed to see the Wizard of Oz. I was well in front of the curtain.
And how old were you at this time, if you don't mind me asking?
I was 18.
Okay. I figured about that. Okay. So yeah, they're like, the wrestlers are probably just like, who's this kid? Like, we don't, I get it, especially in that era for sure.
I don't even know that they knew who I was. So like, I was wearing a pair of blue jeans and they gave me a Hardcore Wrestling Federation t-shirt to put on. And I like, the show gets started and I come out to the ring and I slide underneath and they're like, this first contest is scheduled for one fall and it's a Falls Count Anywhere match. And I'm like, holy shit. Like, I had no idea, like, what I was doing, and all I could think was just don't screw up. Like, whatever you do, don't screw up.
Stay out of the way.
Like, I didn't even know what stay out of the way meant. I like, what the hell do you do? So, the guys come out, they start having their match, and they're brawling on the outside, and I'm just like trying to do what I see on TV, hoping that I'm not screwing everything up. The finish of the match was a big elbow drop from the top rope through a table on the outside, and in like my guts are just going crazy because this is the coolest thing in the whole world. I count 3, the crowd goes crazy, and I'm like, I want to do this for the rest of my life. Like, this is it for me. So then I go to the back, and when I went to the back, the referee had arrived. Whatever the car troubles or whatever it was, he was there, and he's like, do you want to do another match? And I was like, fuck, do I? Like, I'm on the biggest high of all time. Like, this is the greatest thing ever. So I went out and did another match. And I mean, afterwards they were like, oh, you did great. If you ever want to pursue this, we do these spot shows all over Ontario. If you drive to the shows and help us set up the ring, we'll help you learn how the business works. So that's what I started doing. Like any weekend that I could, I would drive. It didn't matter where the hell the show was. If I could borrow my mom's car or thumb it or whatever, just get there. Sometimes I would get to spend, 2 or 3 hours before a show and learn. Other times I would drive for, 4 or 5 hours and I wouldn't get any time. But it was just, I was involved. That's all I wanted.
Being there and seeing it and kind of, even just from afar watching things. It's like, okay, you kind of, maybe you see someone putting a match together or something. And it's like, okay, like, was there much of that going on? Were they kind of, so when you say they were kind of showing you things, were they like teaching you just kind of the ins and outs? Were they having you like teaching you bumping at all? Or was it all just kind of like psychology? Like what were they?
No psychology, none, zero. It was all, I mean, they were looking for a reliable referee. So I was learning how to, accentuate the things that were happening in the ring. But just like you said, like be seen when you need to be seen, but don't be seen.
Stay out of the way.
Otherwise, like, I did learn how to bump. I did learn how to, start doing some of the basics, tying up, just the really, really basics that you learn as you go. But for me, it was actually just like you said, it was watching the others as they're putting their matches together and just like the conversations that they were having and how things start to flow. I had no idea how to put a match together. Well, some would argue I still don't, but
sorry. I wasn't expecting that. Okay. Especially if you ask Sam Hudson. No.
Yeah, right.
Oh, goodness. That was great. Oh, man. Okay. But, well, that's what's so cool, though. Like I picture, like, my first experience really seeing behind the curtain, quote unquote, was for me actually at a Chinlock wrestling show. That was being a lifelong wrestling fan, having such a love and respect for, I always say like the art form of professional wrestling. And what I mean by that is like the, putting a match together, the where to play certain moves. And it's like a chess game, things like that. So to be there, see the ring being put up, seeing guys kind of going over matches, like seeing people I know and am buddies with working out a move or whatever. It's like, this is like the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So to then hear that you kind of took that a step further, like, that's awesome. And there's a lot to be said for a great referee, because a great referee, like, it's kind of funny because it's like a great referee, you don't know they're there until they need to be.
Yeah.
And that's like, I have such respect for referees as well. Like shouts to Brian, who is a fantastic referee, my favorite referee. He's great. Cause it's almost like you forget he's in there. And the next thing you know, he's in someone's face cause they're doing something. It's like, where did he even come from? Like it's crazy.
And when I transitioned from being a referee to being a wrestler, I had a really hard time getting promoters to accept me as a wrestler. Right. And at the time I was insulted by that because I thought, well, they must think that I'm not a good enough wrestler. But what they were trying to say was, you're a really good referee. You've got a talent here that we want to continue to utilize and, embrace. And like, we understand that you want to be a wrestler and maybe you're okay, but you're just really good at what you're already doing. And I didn't understand that at the time. I do now. And I wish I had a better appreciation for it then. That's probably one of the things that I look back on with a little bit of regret because I didn't appreciate what they were trying to say to me. But I'm CJ Felony now, so fuck it.
Exactly. You are the reigning and defending. How long have you been undefeated for now, by the way?
Oh, God.
2 years and a couple months or whatever, something like that?
I say it's still weird for me to talk about wins because my win-loss record is like 95% losses.
The minor details. I mean, for the year of 2021, CJ Felony is undefeated. Is that correct?
That is correct.
There you go. Reigning and defending heavyweight champion for Chinlock Wrestling here, folks. So that's what matters.
I love it. I'm going to bring you on the road.
Well, listen, like that's how I see things anyway. I don't know, but I think it's important to point out these kind of details while having a discussion like this. Listen, the last time I saw you wrestle in a title match, you got the victory. So, I mean,
I did. It was by disqualification, but I mean,
listen, did you win the match?
I won the match.
So there you go.
And that I ran that Madison Rain right out of town.
Hell yeah! What's she doing now?
Yeah,
she actually just
she's on that.
That's the details.
We're not talking.
No, shouts to Madison. She's fantastic.
Oh my god, she's so amazing. She's like one of my most favorite people on earth. She's just such a genuinely nice person.
Mm-hmm. She was awesome, and I mean, on top of all that, like, she's also really good at what she does. So it's like, it's cool when you meet someone. It's like, you're cool, but also you're really good at what you do. Like, it's.
She said to me, she's like, "What do you want to do in our match? What do you want to do?" And I was like, yeah, you're the pro.
You're
what do you not want to do? You tell me what you don't want to do. We won't do any of it. And then you tell me what you do want to do, and we'll do all of that. Like, yeah, why in the hell am I going to tell you what to do? You're the. She's like, no. This is your promotion. It's your show. I want to make sure that you get over and you get something from this. And I was like, we're on different pages here. You're like, I want you to kill me dead in the middle of the ring and pin me. Like, but yeah, she's just so cool.
Yeah, well, and I guess that's just the professionalism, coming out in her, but then also you, where you're like, no, like, you're the star. I want to make you look good too, right?
I'll tell you another story. We weren't originally scheduled to wrestle each other. It was originally supposed to be her and Beautiful Bia, but He contacted us it was probably a week before the show with an injury. So she, extremely apologetic, whatever I can do to help or find somebody else to do the work. And I was like, it's okay, especially because at this point it was starting to get closer to COVID, and we were starting to become a little bit more aware of, shit comes up for human beings, and sometimes it's just got to be what it is. So I contacted Madison and I told her what the situation was, and I was like, listen, these are kind of the options that we have. One, we can cancel the booking and we'll bring you back another time, because I'm just not going to be able to find another qualified female wrestler
in that time frame. Yeah.
In 5 or 7 days, whatever. Or as kind of the top heel in Chinlock, you and I can have a match, for the championship, put the belt on you, and you'll kind of you'll be the new face of the company, because we always want to bring her back. She's so easy and so great to work with. So she messaged back and said, I'm not really into the whole idea of intergender matches, but whatever other girl you find for me, no problem. Like, I don't care if she's brand new, fresh off the street, we'll have a fun match. And I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. Like, it's cool that she wants to, help somebody learn and kind of lead them along. Then about an hour later, she messaged back and she's like, you know what? I thought about it. I trust you. I've never had an intergender match before, but really? Let's do it.
Okay.
And I was like, holy shit, that's cool. Like, that's super cool. So I picked her up at the airport, whatever it was, 4 or 5 days later. And I was like, you're sure you want to do this? Like, you can still cancel. And she's like, no, I trust you. Like, I really think, because we had a couple of conversations over the 2 or so years that she was working with Chinlock, and her philosophies on wrestling are very similar. Just, I like my wrestling really, really good and fake. Like, and unless there's a spot that's intended to be like a trash can,
Sure.
When you whack somebody with a trash can, you better be coming at me fucking 700 miles an hour, or I'm going to pick it up and give it to you.
Yeah, you're going to just bang.
but when we talk about like the art form of professional wrestling, the whole idea here is that we're supposed to be able to get up the next day, provide for our families, go to our real jobs, like all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So we had those conversations before, and I think that probably helped build that trust that I didn't realize I was building at the time.
Yeah.
So I'm her only ever intergender match. Ever.
I mean, that's pretty cool to be able to. I'll
hang my hat on that. Like that's my Rock and Stone Cold WrestleMania 19. That's it. I'm out.
Thank you. Good night. Tip your waitresses. Try the meal. Like it's that's fantastic. I didn't know that. I wouldn't have known that was her. I just assumed at some point she had probably because that's one thing with Chinlock that I thought was really cool.
So one of there are a couple of things that I've really wanted to try to accomplish with Chinlock Wrestling. I have a young daughter, and I like making her feel like she can do anything in the world is the most important thing to me. So I want her to see, like, I don't think there should be gender lines necessarily. It should be talent, people who aren't talented enough to be in those positions or who haven't worked to earn those positions maybe shouldn't have them. But a gender shouldn't be a dividing line. Mm-hmm. So like having Jessie Mack as our first champion, like that's empowering. That's a great, my daughter still, she would have been 4 years old when that match happened. She still says, "Daddy fell asleep in the ring." So Jessie kicked me out, and then Steamboat hit me with the chop, and Daddy slept in the ring afterwards. Like that for her was a life-changing moment.
Right.
You can't touch those. Like, so that's one of the major things. The other thing that I really wanted to do was do something where I could help with kids who were in some way disadvantaged, whether they came from a bad home. Maybe they're addicted to drugs or alcohol or whatever, to be able to make a difference in their life. So that's why we do so much work with Youth Diversion.
Right.
They're such an amazing charity partner to work with. But, having a parent pull you aside and say, that Chinlock event, my child's gone through these, terrible, awful things, but being able to volunteer at the event or even just being able to come to the event, that's extremely powerful. Like it changed their life. So those are some of the major things that I want to continue to do.
Well, that's it. And I mean, just because we're talking about it, let's get into it. Like, obviously I do want to go back in a bit to talk about your career a little more, but like we're talking about it right now with Chinlock Wrestling. There's so many wonderful things that you guys have done. Like you mentioned already, working with, Youth Version there. And right now we're getting ready to hype up on June 4th at 7 p.m. folks. Sorry?
Reigning and defending.
Listen, the reigning and defending undefeated in the year of 2021 Chinlock heavyweight champion of the world, CJ Felony, will be there. In some capacity, I'm sure.
Yes, sir.
Chinlock Wrestling's comeback, man.
Like this is going to be a big deal. Like we've talked about, COVID took a lot of things away, and we were really excited last summer when it looked like things were going to open up. And because we were so excited, we kind of almost prematurely said, hey, now that restrictions are starting to lift, like we're looking at an event. But almost as soon as we said that, it was clear that we weren't going to be able to do it on the scale that we wanted to be able to do it. We probably could have had a smaller event. We looked at doing an event at the Geno's Amersfoort in their parking lot, like an outdoor where people can be socially distanced. There was enough room, but it just didn't feel like the right time. So now, I mean, we've just gone through probably, the worst wave of COVID since the first wave with the Omicron variant, and again, just how much it took away from us. But we're starting to come around the corner, and there's a lot of really fun events that are coming up, and Chinlock is going to be one of them. The Westbrook Soccer Dome, where we're hosting the event, is a beautiful facility, and it's really going to change our game because it's so big.
Yes.
we've limited tickets to 300 with the thought that if the worst case scenario happens and we have to start looking at restrictions again in June, 300 is the minimum that we can put in that building and still safely social distance. But if we come to June and things are looking as good as they are right now, we can stuff 3,000 people in that building.
Right.
So this could potentially be the biggest event that we've ever run.
And
bigger
it's
than
exciting,
Chinlock.
yeah. Which was
that's huge.
Yeah. Which it's funny because for me, Chinlock 5 was actually my first Chinlock event. And
you came in at a good time.
Yeah, seeing the scale. And that's what Jay had said as well. Because I mean, you know, like our dear friend Jason Reese, Jay Bridgers Larts, what's up? I'm wearing the shirt. He had been trying to get me like, you got to come to, like, you're gonna love it. Like it's just, I always kept missing it. And when I showed up at Chinlock 5 and witnessed it, I'm like, oh my, like this is crazy. So to hear that it could potentially even it has the potential. Obviously, you guys are going to be very cautious. Like you guys are very much of that mindset, but it's like this could be.
Safety is the number one priority. Mm-hmm. The second priority is I want everybody to come and have a little bit of fun. Let's get out there and be loud and have fun and kind of forget about all of life's worries, everything that's happened over the course of the past 2 years. All of your favorite Chinlock wrestling superstars and Danny Franchise will be there.
And I will be there yelling at people to buy a Danny Franchise t-shirt. No.
I mean, I just think about it. Yeah, please don't like light your money on fire.
It's
don't
better to do that.
When I think about where Chinlock started to where it got to, you know, this is we're coming back. And whether it's 300 or 3,000, I don't really care because we've got our feet firmly planted on the ground, and we're like it's gonna be big.
That's fantastic. I'm so excited for it. I've already booked the day. I'm like, I'm going. I don't care if I have to hitchhike. I'm gonna be there, and I'll be there yelling very loudly and booing you as you walk to the ring.
Hey, that's what I like to hear.
But that's awesome. And I mean, obviously, as things get a little closer, guys, I will keep you all updated. Obviously, we don't want to, give away too much right now, but tickets on sale.
Maybe I'll drop. Why don't I drop exclusives?
Oh, okay.
So, what's one of the things that makes a Chinlock wrestling event a Chinlock wrestling event?
I mean, I'm going to say the legends. For one.
Legends are definitely one. The other, one of the things that I love the most about our Chinlock events is the Chinlock Rumble.
Yes. Okay.
So we're going to bring back the Chinlock Rumble. That's an exclusive here. That's the very first time human ears besides Jan Murphy has heard that.
Okay. You heard it here first, folks.
The winner of that championship Rumble will become the number one contender to my Chinlock Heavyweight Championship.
Whoa. Okay. Chinlock Rumble at Comeback, June 4th. And whoever wins that is the number one contender for the reigning and defending undefeated in 2021 Chinlock Heavyweight Champion CJ Felony. That's awesome. That's fantastic.
I don't mean to point it out, but I was also undefeated in 2020.
Correct. Yes. Excuse me. Yeah. 2020 and 2021, 2 years of an undefeated streak. I mean, come on.
I'm untouchable.
Yeah. Like, who's Goldberg? What is this Goldberg nonsense? No.
Never heard of her.
Who? Who?
Yeah,
no, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm pumped. Like, I'm super pumped for that because like whoever wins, it's going to be easy pickings for me. So sweet.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, come on. Like let's say whoever it is, I don't care. They're not going to be able to defeat the undefeated for 2 years, CJ Felony. Come on.
Nope, can't do it. But that's where Madison Rain came from. She made her debut at Chinlock 4 in the Chinlock Rumble. Became number one contender. She got beat by Beautiful Bia. And then later when we granted her an opportunity to be in my ring, then I beat her.
Yeah. Look what happened.
I beat her. Okay.
Yeah. What does the record book say? CJ Felony 1, Madison Rain 0.
Big ol' 0.
Come on. That's it. That's the takeaway.
Please don't show her that clip.
It's a work, folks. But no, in all seriousness, though, like I'm excited because I loved the Chinlock Rumble, and I mean, I'm already fantasy booking in my head who I want to see involved with it and who I want to see win. But we're going to talk about that right now. But that's fantastic. I appreciate the exclusive. That's awesome. I cannot wait for this event. ChinlockWrestling.com is the site, folks. Get on there, buy a ticket right now because they're gonna sell out. I'm just calling it right now.
Like I told you, we're limited to 100. We're about a third of the way sold so far, which is a huge pre-sale. Like that's far exceeded my expectations because I thought people would be a little bit more cautious. We're just starting to get open and get out and doing things. But as soon as those tickets went on sale, man, it blew up. So I'm excited.
That's awesome. It's gonna be great. Come and see the reigning, defending, undefeated for 2 years Chinlock heavyweight champion of the world, CJ Felony. Come on, it's worth the price of admission right there. You never know when he's going to show up.
True.
That's it, man. Well, I'm excited for that, guys. I'll be sure to keep everybody posted on more information about that as we get a little closer, as we still are a couple of months out, but I'm absolutely hyped for that. But to go back a little bit here, we were kind of, before we went on this awesome tangent, we were talking about kind of your early career, and you had just kind of started talking about the transition from being a referee and actually getting in the ring as a competitor. What was your first match like? Like at that point, had you kind of had a little bit of training, or what did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I would call it formal training in any way. Just happy to be able to pick the brains of any wrestler who is willing to put up with, me marking out like crazy. And I had a couple of, I go in and do a job for somebody, or, somebody wouldn't show up and I put a hood on and just do something quick. For me, like my career really didn't start to take root until 2003. That's when I was given the name CJ Felony, which when it was given to me, I hated. I absolutely hated. And it's slowly, eventually grew on me, and now I embrace it. But that, like in 2003, that's when I would call my like first actual matches, like ones that mattered. And I was terrified. Like again, all those doubts that creep in your head, like, can I do this? Should I be doing this? Do they think that I can do this? All those things that, like, you get in your head, that still sometimes creep in. Like sometimes I wonder, like, do they actually believe what I'm doing? Because I'm having the time of my life. Like this is the greatest thing in the whole world. But like, are they buying it? I don't know. Maybe. I think they are. I hope they are.
Mm-hmm. Well, and especially in those, like looking at those early days, was there anyone in particular that you work with that really, like, you really enjoyed picking their brain? They had a lot of really helpful information. Was there anyone that kind of stands out in those early days?
I would probably say I got the most valuable advice from Quan Chang at the time. He was one who kind of said, like, you have to stop thinking about this from one spot to the next and think about this as a whole picture. I also got great advice from Ron Hutchison back then as well, who kind of gave me the idea of how to, like, what shifting gears means and how to structure a match so that it doesn't go all in one gear or all at one pace. When do you kick it up a notch? When do you bring it back down? When do you get to that fire spot where, everything's popping and everything's exploding? So like again, I was just happy to pick the brain of there was no such thing as bad advice. And like any piece of advice, any tidbit, anything that I could absorb, I was trying to like absorb as much as I could.
Mm-hmm. And learn and I mean, like you learn things as you go along, like with anything, I guess, but learning the little things that unless you really, really pay attention, you don't notice,
It wasn't until much later in my career that I started being able to like even see what the little things were. I didn't. Now I fully embrace like the little things are everything. The moves are almost secondary to like the little things, all the little stuff that you do and say as you're going along.
You stay down. I think one of my favorite things I ever heard from a very credible source was something Terry Funk said. I think I heard this through Mick Foley that's like the fifth time I mentioned Mick Foley with Terry Funk, where he said to him, he says, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got, he said, it was from Terry Funk, and he said, cactus. Hang on. I used to be able to do a pretty good Terry Funk. Hang on. Cactus. No, I can't do it.
That's pretty good.
I used to be way better at it. If you think you've been down for too long, stay down another few seconds.
Yeah. I say that at the school all the time. I'm like, if you think you're going too fast, you're going way too fast.
I think that's the quote. I think I've messed up the quote, but it's, if you think you're going too fast, cactus, then slow down more.
Yeah, if you think that you're going the right speed, you're still going too fast.
Yeah.
Like, slow it down. If you think you're going too slow, that's the right speed.
Yeah. I'm going too slow. There's nothing quite like just from a fan's perspective, like, if you execute something, like, don't just immediately move on and run to something else. It's like, if I see someone get hit with a devastating power slam or something, or body, and then you just immediately move on to something else. It's like, well, you just hit him with this. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like people, your instinct when you're in the ring is, whether you've planned every single move in a match or you've planned a few moves or you've planned no moves, you find yourself like instinctually moving on to the next thing after you've completed whatever it is that you're in. And you have to remember, like, as I said, I like my wrestling good and fake, and hopefully it doesn't hurt. Despite the fact that maybe it didn't hurt, the illusion is that it is supposed to kill you.
That was the most devastating thing you've ever experienced. Like, that's right. Yeah.
And things that really bother me are like, you get a guy in a corner and then they start throwing 100 punches and 100 kicks and they go like 3,000 miles an hour. Have you ever been punched in the face before?
Yeah, it doesn't feel very good.
No, if anybody listening to this, if you've never been punched in the face before, it's a game changer. Like it changes your life.
Try it sometime.
Yeah, like the first time you get punched in the face and then you see wrestling where they're throwing 3,000 punches, you're like, well, that's all fake because a punch sucks. Like it hurts. Yeah. So that, like, keep that in mind when you punch somebody in the corner. It hurts them. It hurts your hand. Like, take a second to register all of that.
Yes.
If you throw a kick, like, have you ever been kicked in the balls before? Sucks.
Doesn't feel very good.
not my favorite day in the whole world. So,
like hell, you haven't even been kicked in the shin before? Like that shit hurts.
Register that emotion and display it for everybody to see, because when we talk about a guy like Mr. Perfect, the guy who bought the cheapest seat in the furthest corner, the very back row, hidden behind a post, when Mr. Perfect was selling, he knew Mr. Perfect was getting killed. He's the best seller of all time, and Dolph Ziggler's right behind him. Those guys who you can call it over the top if you want to, but again, like, get punched in the face once and tell me that you don't want to go cry in the corner. It fucking sucks. So, like, display that, put that out there.
For sure. And I mean, I think it was something that I always would hear JR, talk about it, where he'd be like, what happened to the days when you would just get punched in the face and he would feel it? Like, he always talks about that on his podcast. He's just like, oh, here comes the 10 punch. Like, he talks about like how, like, like back in the day when you would get punched in the face, like, oh, Terry Funk punched you in the face, it would mean something. Like, Yeah.
Like, I get the evolution of the business too.
Of
the
course.
guys are far more athletic today than ever before. Some of the acrobatic moves that I wish I could do and I can't. But I mean, like, if you imagine somebody doing, a flip and throwing their entire body weight onto you on the outside of the ring, and you're landing on cement, like, that's the illusion, right?
Yeah.
We know that it's padded. We know that there's safe ways to both do the dive, be caught, all those things.
Sure.
Like, we as professionals know that, but the people who we're trying to sell our product to shouldn't be expected to, like, they're trying to get themselves lost in the product. Mm-hmm. They're trying to, you don't go to a movie and see, like, a gunshot and go, "Oh, that gun's fake. Like, that guy didn't really die."
Right.
So when something like that happens, register, like, the total impact, the total, like, a loss for
the total devastation of the move.
Yeah,
like, come on.
Devastation of both the person delivering it and the person receiving it. Like, there should be selling on both parts.
Yeah. And, if you're going to have someone jump over the top rope to a group of people, don't all surround the area like quail staring at the ring waiting for the moment to happen. Like,
drives me crazy. Like, it makes my skin crawl when you see everybody cluster up in a group and then look up, and it's
they're all just looking up. It's like, what are you doing? Like, listen, this is coming from someone who has never taken a bump, like, all, just for disclaimer, but, like, when I'm trying to explain to somebody why I love wrestling and, explaining how, like, if you just get lost in the moment and, like, let yourself be taken by it and don't overthink it. Just have fun. That's what this is supposed to be. Suspend your disbelief. And then they're watching and they go, well, why are all those guys standing in a cluster like that, not even fighting? Like, some people can do it. Don't get me wrong. But, like, I don't know, some of those guys, I'm like, you're just kind of looking at each other.
And then they all start, like, putting their arms around each other.
Yeah.
Like, everybody's in a big group hug, and then it's like, oh, here comes somebody. I totally agree. Don't give people a reason to take themselves out of the moment. Like,
be safe, of course, but
of course. Yeah. I mean, like, I've been dove on. If I'm planning a match and there's a dive like that, I know it's coming. Like, we've talked about it. Nobody goes up on the top rope and just jumps without having a discussion.
What the hell is this guy doing?
Well, when we're outside, we're going to do a dive. Like, it's coming. So I don't have to be looking at the post or at the ropes or whatever to know, okay, we're at the spot where whoever said they were going to come out and do a dive. So, like, I can have my back completely turned. I just have to know timing that I've got to be there to catch them when he comes out.
Right.
So, like, there's definitely an art form to that kind of stuff, so that you don't take your fans out of the moment. And like, there is an element of selling, I think, almost more often from the person delivering
right
the move or delivering, whatever it is, the dive, the punch, the kick, whatever. Like, they also have to sell too and register that they performed it.
That's it. Like, if you deliver, like, one thing I think, as far as, like, a high impact top rope move, like, one person who always stood out to me majorly was Rob Van Dam, right? Like, when he hit that 5-star frog splash, I mean, it was one of the most devastating maneuvers I'd ever seen.
And he came up and he was selling his guts, and you crawl over and make the pin, like, all that great stuff. Like, that's how it should be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that actually fucking hurt, but, like, it's like,
not a stretch to sell when.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. But from what I've been told, sometimes the stuff that hurts the most, it's almost like it hurts so much you forget to sell it. It's like, wow, that really hurt. Like,
like, I say this at the school a lot too. It's the little stuff that hurts, like, the most. Yeah. It's the little stupid things that really hurt, and you're like, holy shit, that hurt. And then, you get into the great big spot, like a power bomb or something, which looks great, but if it's performed properly, it doesn't really hurt. Like, I'm sorry, it doesn't really hurt.
Unless, of course, it's being delivered by CJ Felony during a title match. That's a different story.
And then, in which case, it's completely incapacitating.
Completely devastating.
But yeah, totally devastating. You get you're in a headlock, and then somebody, like, they really get their knuckles up in on your nose or something. That's like, oh, like, Jesus Christ, you know this is fake, right? Like, what are you doing?
It's a work.
Or, they really grab onto you, or when they throw you, like they throw you, and those are steel cables that you're running into. Like, I want to be able to take my own steps and turn and hit the ropes and come back out at my own pace. I don't need you launching me in at 3,000 miles an hour to make it look real. Like, I can make it look real on my own. So it's that kind of stuff that really hurts. Like, it's not always fun.
And I mean, like, I would imagine from speaking with someone who, is a dear friend of mine who did some training with you, of course, like, I asked him after he had done it a few weeks, like, what was the thing that hurt the most? Like, he was like, honestly, he's like, it's the damn cables.
Yeah.
Running the ropes. Like, he's like, I was not ready for how much that would hurt.
Like, neither was I. That was the thing that hurt me the most in training too. And I would come home with like rope burns on my back.
Yeah.
And I wore them like a badge of honor. I was like, look at my back. It's all torn up. And people were like, what the hell is wrong with you? And I'm like, yeah, this is sweet.
Look at this. Touch them. Come on. Like,
oh my God, get out of here.
Yeah. What the hell's wrong with this guy? Hit me with a chair. What? Like, no.
Sir, you have to leave the pharmacy at Walmart.
Tried at 11. A man was in Sharpsburg. Can't even get through it. Can't even get through the bit. But that's what's so interesting. Like, to me, like, looking at, like, say, like, what you're doing with the Chinlock Wrestling School, which, I hope that we can, of course, get back to that, because that was something else, unfortunately, that, with the pandemic had to be COVID
took it away.
Yeah. But I mean, we were able to at least see a full class come through that. And at the student showcase, we got to see some phenomenal matchups from students. Looking back, when you really started getting into your career and you really started to feel more comfortable, was there a point when you kind of had that aha moment where you were like, okay, I feel like I'm kind of getting to be at least okay at this? Or did you have that confidence from day one?
No, I actually still don't really have that confidence. Like, I just never really, I think I project that confidence. Like, sometimes I think I come across as though I've got it all figured out, but like, truly, I have no idea what I'm doing. I just try my best to do what I think people want to see, like what I would appreciate as a fan. That's what I try to put out there. I didn't ever really feel like I was qualified to be a teacher. It took Jan Murphy, like, again, one of those moments where he's like, come on, like, there's nobody more qualified to do this but you. And I'm like, I don't get it. Like, I don't think I can. And he's like, you just do it. Trust me. It, like, you don't understand the talents that you have. And once you start doing it, like, that's when you'll kind of come to the, and I mean, as I would say, probably the first 6 or 8 weeks of the class, I was like, I don't know if I'm like, am I doing this right? There's no manual for wrestling school where it's like, okay, right, today we're doing headlocks. It's like, I'm going to teach these guys kind of how I was taught. And it was like, get in the ring and do rolls, get in the ring and do bumps, learn how to flip bump, run those ropes until your back bleeds. Like, is that the right way to learn how to wrestle? I don't know.
Learn the fundamentals and how to do them safely. Then we can worry about quadruple moonsaults down the road one day, maybe. Like,
probably drove those guys crazy because I would make them get in the ring and do the exact same things over and over and over and over and over and over again. And I just kept saying, like, I want you to do this so many times that you don't have to think about it anymore. Right. Like, when somebody gives you a clothesline and you need to bump, don't think about the bump or the clothesline. It just happens. Mm-hmm. And then when you can get to that point, like, where you don't, I was always worried about, like, executing a move properly. Right. If somebody gave me an arm drag, did I take the arm drag right? Did it look right? Did I bump properly? And I was screwing everything up because I was overthinking it all the time. Like, I know how to take an arm drag. I've known how to take an arm drag for 20 years. So when I stopped thinking about the mechanics of the arm drag while it was happening and I just let it happen, that's when it started. Right. Like, I guess that I'm having my aha moment right now. Like, it's, right, you just have to turn your brain off. Everything in your brain is telling you that what's happening is wrong. Like when somebody's running at you with a clothesline or a steel chair, or they're trying to kick you in the face, all of your instincts are to get the hell out of the way. In wrestling, you've got to stand there. Like you've got to
right.
and let it happen. And then you also have to be able to protect yourself. So like there's lots of little mechanics that you overthink.
Right. And when you get to the point where you're not thinking about the little things, then you can focus on things like the psychology side of things. And, you know,
yeah, I don't think about the moves anymore.
Right.
If somebody says to me, I want to do a triple whatever, like
a triple Ferdinand Snavitz reversed. Like what?
Sure. Sounds great. Like, whatever you want to, like, there are only really 3 bumps in a wrestling match. There's a front bump, a back bump, and a flip bump. You're either bumping on your stomach, bumping on your back, or being flipped. Like, that's it. So whatever it is, it's going to be one of those 3.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah, like, I mean, you seem to know what the move is, so that's great. Like, I'm sure you're a professional. You're going to take care of me in doing it. You're not going to kill me with it. And if you do kill me with it, then I don't ever to do it again.
Right. On that note, I have to ask, I'm assuming probably in your early career too, in that like early mid 2000s, was there anyone you like worked with? You don't have to name names, but was there anyone you worked with who like you kind of were like, oh geez, like I kind of
there were people who were stiff with me. I think they were maybe sometimes like I think they were trying to get rid of me. I was annoying.
Okay.
You know, I was that little annoying person that was asking all the questions, and like I just wanted to be around wrestling so badly. They were like, holy shit, just go away. Just let us breathe. But I would so I mean, when I would get in the ring with them, they would kind of beat me up a little bit. But I mean, over the years, I've definitely had some really bad matches that I wouldn't want to relive. But nobody, I can't think of anybody that I would never work. Harley Davidson. I would never work with Harley Davidson.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear at least though. Cause like, you know, it's this, some people definitely, I'm sure have some horror stories of, you know, this guy did this and yeah.
I've seen people intentionally hurt people.
And I like that.
Yeah. Again, you're putting you can, whatever move you just created and gave me a name for, I would trust you to take care of me doing it. Yeah. Like I said. And if you screwed it up and hurt me accidentally, that's one thing. You know, sometimes things just don't go as planned and people get hurt. But if you intentionally try to hurt me, or you intentionally try to take away my ability to be able to provide for my family, that's different. And I've seen it. It's never happened to me, thankfully, but I've seen it.
Right. And that's, you know, you hate seeing stuff like that. Like, cause I mean, there's, as wrestling fans, there's lots of stuff out there of people, you know, even if they're necessarily trying to injure that person, it's like they're out there, like, you know, they call a clothesline and then they just punch the guy in the face or something. Like, you know, it's like stuff like that for sure does happen and it can happen. So it's at least good to hear though, that you never really, experience that, because I mean there's some, especially in the tape trader, you know, era, like there's some scary stuff out there of guys just beating each other up. Like
there have been times people have come to me and said like, I want to do whatever move it is, and I say I don't think I don't have enough trust to take it. Like maybe I've got to see it first before, you know, somebody wants to do some crazy top rope move or whatever. And I've got myself into situations where I've agreed to do things and gotten hurt, and I probably should have known better. But I've never had anybody like intentionally come out to like gun and to really hurt me.
Except for Jan Murphy, of course, but that's, you know, that's neither here nor there.
But he's not a wrestler.
Yeah.
Barely a journalist.
Oof. Okay. We love Jan Murphy here on the Harder Show. I won't, you know.
I'm sorry to hear
that. Still some old wounds there, but how's your head feeling?
I don't want to talk about it.
Okay, we'll move on.
I told you there was nothing off the table. That's off.
That's the one thing. But listen, I'd like to though also remind everybody that we are talking to the 2-year undefeated streaked Chinlock heavyweight champion CJ Felony. So, again, that's a takeaway.
Yeah, that's pretty big.
I mean, really, that's at the end of everything we've talked about here today. That is the takeaway from this podcast.
I hope
CJ
everybody
Felony
does.
Oh, that's it, man. Well, as we get ready to wind down here, I could talk to you all night. There's so much other stuff I want to ask you, but one thing I really wanted to make sure I promised myself I'd talk to you about. There was a time I messaged you because I got so excited when I heard, I love your current entrance theme, which of course is Disturbed's Asylum. And it's, I love it. When I was at Chinlock 5 and I heard it, I went, oh, cause I love Disturbed. And I was like, yes, I got so excited. And I saw a video. I think it was from the year before, a couple years before you came out to Love the Way You Hate Me.
Yes. Like a Storm.
Thank you. I couldn't remember the name of the damn band off the top of my head. And I freaked out because I always thought that song would make a great entrance theme. And then I was watching the video and I was like, oh my God. I got so excited.
That song, I love Asylum. I'm a huge Disturbed fan. I've seen Disturbed live in concert 13 times. Love Disturbed. Just love Disturbed. So I always wanted to find a song that worked, and Asylum works. But Love the Way You Hate Me speaks to me on so many levels. So when I heard it, I'm a Sirius XM subscriber, so I have Octane playing in my car. If it's not Octane, it's Turbo, all the time. That song played, and I was like, holy, this is a banger. First, I was trying to think of a different, it would work for somebody else, but the more I listened to it, the more I was like, this is me. It just, everything about it I love. And the didgeridoo is a guilty pleasure.
Yes. Who else has a didgeridoo solo in their song? I mean, come on.
Yeah, right.
Like a Storm are fantastic. So I wanted to ask, when you started wrestling, what were some of your? Because I'm assuming you probably had a few themes over the years. What were some of your themes that you had?
So for a long time I used Unreal by Soil.
Oh my, you just became even more of one of my favorite wrestlers because I fucking love Soil.
Yeah, Soil's awesome.
That's awesome.
So after that, I used Lies by Evanescence.
Nice.
I used that for a long period of time. Then after that, I was watching an old WCW clip and Big Bubba Rogers came out and I was like, shit, his theme's pretty cool. So I used his theme for a while.
I can't actually, I'm going to look that up because I can't think of that.
Pretty much my entire OCW run, that's what I used as a theme song. After that, I got to think back. I used something briefly after that before I went to the Like a Storm. Love the Way You Hate Me. And then when I was coming into how can I forget? I've used Outshined by Soundgarden, which is probably my number 2 band of all time.
Nice.
I was laying in bed one night, listening to the radio, and Outshine came on, and I was like, what a great, that's such a great riff.
Yeah.
It's such a cool tune. So that's what I used as a tag team theme forever. And I always kind of kid with Catalyst. I'll send them a message, and I'm like, hey, I think I found a new song. Check it out. And then I just, play Outshine again.
Oh, I love that. That's something too I wanted to ask you about. You're obviously known as a singles competitor, but then also you've had this team with Catalyst Nick Williams, Total Devastation. Now, how long have you guys been teaming together? And when did you meet?
10 years. So 2020 was 10 years, and we had a ton of T-shirts made up for the Decade of Devastation that are sitting in a box because we couldn't sell them.
Well, listen, you guys were undefeated in 2020 and 2021, so
yeah.
I mean, throwing it out there.
Hey, we're the World Tag Team Champions of the world.
Yeah,
we've held the EWLS Tag Team Championships for 6 years. We've never defended them, never once.
Yeah, so you've never lost.
That's right. That's all that matters.
Out there. That's awesome.
We won the belts and killed the town.
I mean, the lifetime champions. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's fantastic. Yeah, no, I was a big fan of Catalyst when I saw him too, and so it was a buddy of mine. He was like, "That dude is awesome," and he comes out to Seven Dust Black. I mean, come on, that's
when he first started. He started training in, I think it was 2009. I was looking at my career then, thinking maybe it's time for me to wind down. So that kind of gives you a window into like I've kind of taken a few times. I've taken a step back and said, okay, maybe like you've obviously achieved far more than you ever should have. Maybe this is your time. Like maybe you should run off. So I was thinking about it then, and he was in training, and he was just like killing everybody. He was so athletic. He was picking everything up like really, really quickly. But it just didn't ever feel like he was going to get an opportunity to get onto those events. And I thought it was such a crime. Like he was just so good. So because I was trying to wind down, I was like, well, maybe I could bring him onto the shows as my tag team partner, have him kind of get a little bit of shine from that. And then I can slowly pull away and let him off he goes. So that's how the tag team started. We didn't have a name. We didn't have a move. We barely knew each other at the time. I just thought he's so good, and I don't feel like he's going to get an opportunity. So maybe I can use some of my shine and let him go. Turns out that we're still teaming. We're still going. So maybe he wants me to back off. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think it's so cool that, you guys have been doing this together, and I have such respect for you and for what you've done in your career and what you continue to do in your career as well. And I mean, I'm so excited. What really made me such a fan of your work was actually when I saw the videos of you rightfully attacking Jan Murphy. Let's just, throw it out there. As much as we love Jan Murphy here on the Harder Show, it was those videos that really, I was just like, I think I messaged Jay and was like, I want in. I want to be there. I want to see this. It made me such a fan of what you were doing.
They were so fun to produce, like so fun to produce because I wanted to do something a little bit different, right? And again, make people believe that it's real, like really make people. And when I say our inbox blew up, the first video with RJ, when I tore up that t-shirt, that wasn't my idea. That was RJ and his mom with Jan. They came up with the idea, and then Jan pitched it to me, and I was like, "Oh, I love it! Like, let's. Are you sure RJ is going to be okay that we do that?" He's like, "Yeah, he's all in."
Oh yeah.
So we filmed the video, tore up the T-shirt, and then him and I sat on the living room floor and played WWE 13 for like an hour. He was showing me all of his created characters, and like he made me play as Tommy Dreamer, so I kind of resent him for that. So that video aired, and our inbox just blew up, and I was like, "Oh, we're on to something!" Like every time you respond to me, I don't make it wrestling. Like, don't be like, on Saturday night I'm gonna beat your ass. Like that. Yeah. That's wrestling. Don't do that. Just like imagine I really did this. Imagine I really went to RJ's house and tore up the T-shirt, threw it in his face, and tried to stuff a $5 bill in his pocket. Whatever. Like, how would that really make you feel? Yeah. Like, give me disappointment, give me anger, give me frustration. Like those emotions, capture that, put it on camera. So then he would put his videos out, and then it would blow up again. Like, are you going to beat Justin's ass? Like, this is way over the line. I was like, we need to go further over the line. Like, who else can we? So I went to Far's gym. Far was great to work with. Same thing. He's like, really punched me in the face. I was like, punches suck, man. Like, this is. I'm not punching you in the face. Yeah. But he was like, really make it look real. So, I'm on top of him, pounding the piss out of him. Noel, same thing. He's like, I really want you to crank me with the belt. And I'm like, it's steel, man. Like, I know you see it on wrestling, but if I hit you with this, like, I'm coming.
It's good. It's, yeah.
So I did whack, and same thing. He messaged me afterwards. He's like, my Italian family wants you dead, and I'm like, oh no, like maybe we've gone a little bit too far.
Yeah, don't turn your car on, bro. Just
Yeah, right. But every time Jan would respond, like that was the glue to all of this. I can go and do all of this stuff, But if he responds and he's like, on Saturday night, I'm going to kick your ass.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it's just phony wrestling, like whatever. But like, he was so good at capturing those emotions, like that sadness that his best friend would, like, how could you do this? All the great things that our charity does and all the great things that you're involved in, you're throwing it away so you can get a little bit of YouTube fame.
Right.
Like,
being barred from the event and, all that.
How could you do that to me? It was so good.
Yeah, it was really true. Like, I remember even being, the I wouldn't say jaded anymore, but, at the time, maybe being a bit of a jaded wrestling fan. And I'm watching this just going like, whoa, like this is like, I remember messaging Jay and going like, this is real. Like, this is like, oh my goodness. Like, and
I also didn't want to get to the point where it was like, this is real, but everything else I'm watching is fake.
Right.
Like, I wanted it to be like really dance on that fine line of, I got to show up Saturday and see what's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, and that's what was so, it was so cool about it, was just like, you need to be there to see what unfolds. Cause it's just, it was and
awesome, the whole idea, and I joke about it, like my win-loss record really is like 3,005. So I wanted, even if I were to win, I wanted to send the fans home happy seeing me get my ass kicked. Like, it's important to me that they get what they pay for. Like, they're there to see me get my ass kicked. So that's where laying in the ring until like they're like rolling me up in the canvas. That's where that was born from, because I just thought, like, what better water cooler moment the next day than, did you see Felony? He was laying in the ring until like they were tearing the chairs down. Like, the whole event was over. He was still knocked out.
Yeah, I remember so vividly that night and that moment when, all of the yourself and all the students were there. Like, I remember, mainly because one of my friends was involved with it, but like, then the aftermath of looking at the ring and seeing you laying there and still laying there, and we're sitting there, because I'm like, I want to sit here until he gets up. I want to see how long he's going to sit for. And then going like, okay, guys, like, this is ridiculous. We need to leave. Like, we got to get out of here and go
15 minutes, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I would, like, until somebody drags me out of there, I'll lay there all night. You can roll me up.
Well, and that's what I heard afterwards from Sam. He's just like, oh, dude, like, nah, he's not going to move. You guys should have just left. Like, I was like, how long is he going to lay there? Like, there's no way they're literally tearing the ring down. He's going to get up, and nope.
And it's a selfish reason too. Like, I want to give the people what they paid for and like see me not like knocked out and killed, but it's also kind of like my moment of zen. It's like, the show's over. Everything went well. The fans are happy. I'm literally laying there and like in bliss thinking, like, thank God. And Jan, every single time we complete a show, he says, so when's the next one? And I'm like, I'm out. Like, we're not doing a next one. This is it. And he's like, no, come on. Like, seriously, when? And I'm like, no, like, we're not, there are no more shows, because I never really wanted to get involved in promoting. I had kind of like dabbled in it previously before Chinlock. And it's a very difficult thing to make sure that everybody's happy.
Right.
And that's not just, the wrestlers, and making sure that they're satisfied with whatever creative it is that they're doing, whatever matches it is that they're having, but making sure that the fans are like genuinely, $10 is a lot of money for people that go and earn and then plop down on the fact that like wrestling is the coolest thing in the world to me. And they're spending it to let me do that. Like, they're spending their hard-earned money, bringing their family, trusting me not to, it's a family event, and they're trusting me to like entertain their children in a safe way. That's super, super powerful. So, I every time we do it, I'm like, no, I'm out. Like, we're good. I've done my good deed. We're done. He's like, no, like, don't be stupid. Let's keep going. So he like really has to talk me into, and part of me really means when I say like, I'm good, I'm done. But I always know that we're going to go forward and push it further. And
Yeah, you just know, okay, it'll come back around. Like, yeah.
Yeah. I don't take the responsibility of it being a family event and like people who work very hard for their money, who have families to provide for, who have like real life responsibilities, spend their money to let me live my dream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're not taking that for granted. Like, you can tell you're very much, you know, I mean, even seeing you at the events, running around, making sure everything's good. Like, you know, both you and Jan, like just running around and making sure everyone's where they need to be and everyone's getting in okay and stuff. Like, you can feel how much passion and care you guys have for it. And it's very contagious. And it's something that I know everyone involved with Chinlock Wrestling, down to, you know, all of even the crew that just helped set it up and stuff like that. Like, everyone is so passionate about wrestling and providing that entertainment. It's very for the whole family, which is another thing I really love about Chinlock. And it's so cool to see, and it's so contagious.
Thank you. That's a huge compliment. Thank you.
It's my pleasure, man. And, you know, it's been an absolute pleasure getting to chat. I could chat with you for another 3-4 hours, but I wanted to make sure, last thing I wanted to ask you here before I let you go.
Yeah.
Possibly the most difficult question I'm going to ask you, but we'll see how it goes here.
Okay.
Do you have a favorite match of yours that you can pinpoint? And do you have a favorite match just from as a fan perspective?
Oh boy. It's hard to pick like just one like favorite match of all time for me, like in my career, because I've been so blessed to do so many really, really cool things. Like, I could say being able to wrestle in my hometown against Hacksaw Jim Duggan, like that.
That's pretty cool.
That's pretty freaking cool. But then I also think back to, like, you know, being able to, when Catalyst and I created the tag team, we very quickly won tag team championships. And then, you know, we were able to also then get another tag team over who became Freak Nation. And they've had a great run. Like, being able to, awesome. To almost like, you know, build and create. I look back at my match with Silver Fox at the student showcase. Like, right. That's a pretty friggin' cool moment that would be impossible to recreate. So it's hard for me to pick just one favorite. I mean, they all kind of rank pretty high. As a fan, my answer always changes, but I always seem to come back to Rock and Hogan at WrestleMania 18.
I mean, yeah, that's that's a pretty big a match that if you watch on mute, you'd throw up. But
yeah, sure. Like, as a wrestling match, awful, terrible. But, you know, I went to WrestleMania 18 and I bought tickets to WrestleMania 18 on the floor. I think I was in the 7th row, and I sold them because I wasn't really super like ripped on the card. I didn't, you know, Stone Cold and Scott Hall.
Yeah,
I really wanted Stone Cold and Hogan. Like, that's where I wanted to go first as a fan. So a friend of mine, Rich, who is actually kind of really where Rich helps build my wrestling career. And I hate that I haven't mentioned him yet. Today is actually the anniversary of his passing.
Oh, okay.
So when Rich passed away, he left me some of his wrestling belongings, and the CJ Felony character was created on a tribute show to him. He was a huge wrestling fan, always wanted to get involved, had a lot of health problems that prevented him from doing so. So to be able to wrestle a match dedicated to him in front of his parents and in front of his family was really big. And today is the anniversary of his passing, and I'm sorry for not mentioning that before now. But he convinced me to go to WrestleMania 18 too. So I bought tickets on eBay the week before the show. I sat in the 100 level, and the feeling of the ground shaking underneath me when the crowd was roaring for Hulk Hogan. I've been in some pretty big, like, you know, I've seen some big home runs at Blue Jays games in the same stadium, not the same feeling. Like, there was 70,000 people running on one emotion, Hulkamania. Nothing else mattered in the whole world but Hulkamania in that moment. It was unbelievable. So much so that when we drove home that night, it was freezing rain. we didn't get home until 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And I called Rob, Silver Fox. And I was like, did you tape WrestleMania? You need to come over right now. I have to. So he brought his tape over. He lived across the street. Brought his tape over, and they're pushing it into the VCR, watching it. It's hard. It's hard for me to.
Yeah, it's such a special match.
Yeah, like I look at, Flair and Michaels, or you could pick either the Michaels Undertaker matches at WrestleMania. You can look at, Rock and Austin at 19. You can, Brett and Austin, all great choices. Like, there's no anybody who says, like, unless somebody comes to you and they're like, my favorite match is a Danny Franchise match, then, block them. But there's no wrong answer here, except Danny Franchise.
Except for Danny Franchise. Oh, man. Shout out to Danny Franchise. We here at the Harder Show are fans of Danny Franchise, but if you want to buy a T-shirt, that's cool, I guess. But
I'd prefer you light your money on fire. Really, truly, for me.
For the reigning, defending, unbeaten in the year 2000 and 2021, Chinlock Heavyweight Champion of the World, CJ Felony. Burn your money instead of buying a Danny Franchise T-shirt.
I'm going to put that on my next T-shirt.
This is way better than a Danny Franchise T-shirt. Just a big picture of him with a big X on it.
You know what? There was a moment at the last brewery show. I was standing in the group with the students, and one of the students had gone and they bought a Danny Franchise T-shirt and put it on, and then they walked back to the group, and I don't want to say who it was because I was truly joking. I was, course, but I just looked and it was just like the disappointment that I felt in that moment. Have I not told you to make better choices?
Haven't we talked about this?
I was like,
I don't know if you're going to make it, kid. I don't know.
Yeah.
I need to rethink this whole thing.
Yeah. And all of a sudden your rate just went up.
You got the Danny Franchise tax. Obviously, we're joking. We all love Danny Franchise. Big shouts to him.
Again, one of my favorite people on earth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I adore Danny. He's such a genuine human being. And I'm so lucky to have his friendship. Really.
Yeah. He was only behind the beards because I already knew them, but at that brewery show, he was one of the first people that really went out of his way to aside from, like yourself and Jen and that, like, just be like, oh, I don't know who you are. Hey, and I was just like,
he's another guy that just loves being there. Like he loves wrestling so much, and he's just thrilled to be a part of the events. He wants nothing more than to be able to entertain people and make people feel like he felt when he was a fan, he was watching wrestling. And I admire that about him a lot.
Oh, for sure. And it's, I can't, if you guys can't tell, I keep talking because I'm just like, I'm so excited to be able to start talking about a Chinlock wrestling event. I'm so excited to see one unfolds and to be there on June 4th to see the reigning, defending, unbeaten for over 2 years, Chinlock Heavyweight Champion of the World, CJ Felony, in some capacity in action. Hopefully, we'll see. We don't. He doesn't need to defend his title. I
don't need to.
No, you've proven enough at this point.
Absolutely. I should be able to retire on top. We talked about that at the beginning of the show. We'll talk about it at the end of the show. You retire on top.
That's it. Everyone knows who the champ is. Let's just, that's it.
I love it. I just love it so much.
Awesome. Well, Justin, I can't thank you enough, man. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to chat with you, and I'll be very much looking forward to seeing you on that day there, man.
Listen, thank you so much for having me on. I know this kind of came about last minute, but as much as you were looking forward to having me on the show, I was so looking forward to being able to come onto the show. This was super, super fun, and I'd love to be able to do it again.
Oh, for sure. There is so much stuff that we didn't even talk about that I wanted to ask. So we will definitely have to get you back on sometime to talk some more wrestling stories.
You're the man. I love it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, brother. There you have it, folks. My chat with Justin Cuzio, of course, also known as CJ Felony, the reigning, defending, undefeated in the last 2 years, heavyweight champion of the world for Chinlock Wrestling. Big shout out to CJ for coming on and being so candid and just being such a great guest. I literally could have talked to him for another 3 hours. Seriously, there was so much ground to cover. So definitely be sure to keep an eye out for him to come on again sometime, because that was a lot of fun. I love wrestling, and I don't get to talk about it a lot on the show because I also really love music and podcasting. So whenever I have guests on who are in the wrestling world, I have so much fun talking about it, and it really reminds me of the love that I have for professional wrestling, and that was just a pleasure. So Justin, thank you so much, man, for coming on and being such a fantastic guest. And shout outs to everyone at the Chinlock Wrestling Camp. Something tells me you might see some faces from Chinlock Wrestling a little closer to June, because this was a bit of a last minute thing, as I think we mentioned a couple times there. And Justin was gracious enough to literally come on with 10 minutes notice. He saw a status I put up the other night, if you guys saw it, saying, I had a last minute cancellation, and Justin was like, yo, let's go. So it just worked out, and some magic was captured. So again, big shout out, Justin. Thank you so much. And shout outs to you. Thank you so very much for listening, and especially if you're still listening, because this is the outro, and most people tune in after the outro, but you're still listening, and you are seriously the best. And I'm going to grant you the patented audio fist bump here on the Harder Show. You ready for this? That was a good one on that. The whole desk shook. What other idiot out there would punch their microphone? But man, just thank you so much for the support and for still listening up to this point here on the show. And before we go, I, of course, need to take a second to give a huge shout out to the Patreon supporters of the Harder Show, my hotheads. We, of course, have my man, my confidant, Mr. Scotty D, who has been one of my dearest friends for many years and has been a supporter of the show pretty much from day one. So, Scott, thank you so very, very much for not only being a fantastic human being, but also being a supporter of this podcast and a patron, a hodhead. And then, of course, I need to give a huge shout out to the Grey Rooms family, Jason Wilson, Brooks Bigley, everyone over there at the Grey Rooms. Thank you guys so much for all the support you have given me, not only with your patronage and becoming a hodhead with the very generous patrons of the Grey Rooms team gives me every single month, but also just for the vote of confidence that you guys took in me to allow one of my episodes to appear on your feed. It seriously meant the world to me, and I am such a genuine fan of the Grey Rooms. It just, it's still surreal. It's been almost a month now, and I still can't shake what a surreal, cool thing that was for me as a genuine fan of the show, and to have you guys as patrons here on the Harder Show. And if you want to get little shouts like that every single week here on the show, check out the Patreon, patreon.com/The Harder Show. Find a tier that is right for you. You get a shout out like that, and also some fun bonus content that is actually coming this month. I'm very excited. I'm actually going to be recording it very, very soon. The first episode of a Patreon exclusive podcast, and I got some cool things planned for that. So get on over to the Patreon, find a tier that's right for you. I got a lot of cool things coming with that. We did hit our first goal, but we can always keep that goal going. You know, better the Patreon does, the better I can make my podcast, and the better I can make my podcast, hopefully the more enjoyable it can be for all of you guys. That's what I'm trying to do here. Take you out of what's going on in the world right now and just try and entertain you for a little bit and try and make you laugh, make you think, hopefully make you laugh. That's kind of what I like to do here. Just make you laugh, smile, be entertained. That's what the Harder Show is all about. That's why I started this podcast. That's why I love podcasting so much. And episodes like this really encapsulates what I just love about doing this podcast and what it means to me. So thank you very much. Your support means the world to me, and I hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you did, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a rating if you can. Ratings help this podcast grow. So if you're on an app that you can leave a rating on, be sure to do that, especially if it's Spotify. That helps the show immensely. And with that, I'm going to sign off here today. Thank you so very much again for tuning in, and I will catch you next time on The Harder Show. Take it easy, guys.